They say compliance is good business. On today's show, we have Karen McGuinness. Karen runs the Office of the Investor at the newly formed CIRO, the new SRO. We're going to learn about all the things that you need to keep your business safe. Hi, I'm Chris Reynolds, and I'm on a mission to help independent financial advisors build a better business through a remarkable client experience. In this podcast, you're going to learn how to do that from my conversations with the visionaries, the leaders, the independent advisors who are reshaping the future of the financial advice industry. At the end of each episode, you're going to walk away with an actionable idea that you can take and use right now, and it will help you to build a better business today. This is Turning the Page. Although all of us wish that we lived in a world where everyone played fair and followed the rules, we know there's no such place. There are unscrupulous people everywhere. And as a result, in every industry, there are regulators to keep consumers safe, especially the financial industry. The financial industry, and I've said this on many shows, we run and we are in the business of trust. We need our consumers to trust us. We need our clients to be confident in the recommendations that we make to them. And we have to know, and clients have to know, that what we are recommending to them is in their best interest. And what we also have to prove is we've done our homework in making recommendations. And on top of that, we are on top of any changes that need to be made. Regulators are there to make sure we're following a consistent methodology and have the notes and paperwork to prove that methodology. It's not an enviable role to play. It's a tough role to be a regulator. And believe it or not, entrepreneurs sometimes don't like their integrity being questioned, or sometimes they don't like showing their work, which seems a little odd. And this sometimes can cause what I call undue friction, because regulators have a job to do and they want to make sure the consumer's safe. We have a business to run, and we want to make sure those things are cohesive. And to prove this point, we had at our fall summit at our organization, we had a pleasure of a fireside chat with today's guest. And, as I sat in the audience and I was watching Karen, and I was like, this would be a great podcast, because regulars, unfortunately, don't get to tell their story that often. They're sort of there doing their policy, doing their thing. But I thought this would be a great show, or even a series. So we might have her back. So today we have Karen McGuinness. Karen runs the Office of the Investor for CIRO, the new SRO. She was previously the president and CEO of the MFDA, the other before the SROs got together. And she's held positions in the enforcement branch of the OSC. If there's any authority on regulation and what the regulators are trying to do, it would be Karen. So there's a great pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show, Karen.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. Thank you for that introduction. You did a great job giving an overview of my career. So I appreciate the introduction.
Well, maybe you can tell us your story. Maybe how did you get here? Like this is quite a career path through regulation, and I'm sure that it has its moments. So how did you get here? How did you finally decide I'm going to go into regulation? Who makes that decision?
Well, it's interesting. I started as a forensic accountant, and I ended up at the OSC in their enforcement department. And I can say, having to witness the impact of unscrupulous advisors. And I really actually hate using that term. It's unscrupulous individuals who claim to be advisors. That's how I kind of look at it.
I like that terminology better myself.
But in any event, I've seen the devastation that they can have on people's lives. And that kind of led me to where I am today.
Oh, no.
One thing I did want to say, though, is that sometimes scares advisors when I say I come from enforcement. So I want to say,
there's got to be a better term. Yeah.
yeah. I would say, though, that yes, I have seen the worst of advisors. Right. I've absolutely seen that. But thankfully, they represent a small minority of advisors in the industry. By far, the majority of advisors are doing the right thing. You're providing valued advice, and you're helping your clients meet their financial goals. And as a regulator, I thank all of your compliant advisors who have increasingly challenging jobs, and I'm sure we're going to get into that. But you continue to do right by your clients. And selfishly, you make my job easy. So for your compliant advisors out there, I thank you for all your hard work.
Oh, that's great. And to your point, I think everybody wants to run their business clean. They want to do the right job, and sometimes just really the interpretation. Now, from your perspective, what is the role of the regulator, and what's the role of this newly formed SRO? That's a sort of a question that always comes up, and I'm sure it's what it was before, but I think from your perspective, where do you think the role comes in?
Well, I think you said it best when it's about trust, right? We want clients, we want investors, we even want potential investors to trust that when they're investing, they're treated fairly and reasonably, right? So, technically, our mandate is to protect investors and oversee fair and efficient capital markets. But again, it's really wanting to ensure that clients are not at a disadvantage. They're not subject to unreasonable sales practices, and that generally that they have trust in the system. That's what
Right.
our role is.
Yeah. And I think that's what everybody wants. Like, it's
Mhm.
just good for business that our consumers trust that they're getting the right advice. Because if they have to start questioning whether their advisor is, has a conflict of interest or
Yep.
is not making a recommendation and is incentivized for certain recommendations, these are all things that certainly I, as a consumer, would want to be very transparent so I could make the right decision for myself and my family. Um, I'm really interested in, I think our listeners are as well, is this new Office of the Investor
Mhm.
that you're heading out. Tell us about that and what it's going to mean for both investors and advisors.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. It's a great new initiative. It came out of there's a CSA paper on the SRO, the future of the new SRO, and they said that they wanted to see an Office of the Investor into, at the time, new SRO, right now CIRO. And our mission in the Office of the Investor is to understand investors, educate them, and then elevate their voice within CIRO. So we understand them by conducting research and outreach initiatives. We educate them by providing information and resources and tools that they can use. And finally, we elevate their voice by providing input into our regulatory activities. So we're bringing most significantly in policy development. So how does it impact investors? Using the investor lens versus a regulatory lens, or perhaps a policy department, policy council lens. And finally, we elevate their voice as well by supporting our investor advisory panel. So I'm not sure if your advisors are aware that we do have an investor advisory panel, and they provide us advice on investor issues. So if anybody is interested in understanding what they're looking at, we also have all of their materials are on our website, so you can look and see what their agendas look like and what topics they're interested in.
That's very interesting. See, even I learned something new today. And so I'm going to go on there and I'm going to look that up, because it would be interesting to see what their perspective is, because we have sort of our filtered biases, of course, from being in
Yeah.
the business so long and being on our side of the business. But it would be interesting to see, what kind of topics are coming through that consumer. I think it's a very good initiative, and I think it's getting the right perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting because everybody has you talk about the average investor. There's no such thing as an average investor, right? People
Yeah.
are diverse in so many ways. And so getting these different perspectives is really helpful as a regulator to understand, investor behavior, their thoughts, their needs as well. And as I said, they're varied. So it's really important to get that perspective. And I would also say, though, the one other thing about the Office of the Investor that I think would help is different or new, is that it gives us kind of a greater flexibility. Having a specific group gives us some greater flexibility to look at issues, not again, just as a regulator where you're looking at
Right.
rules, compliance, enforcement, but you're really changing it to the lens of the investor. And sometimes the answer is not regulatory. It could be, maybe we can help with technology solutions, right, to make
Right.
things easier for clients. Maybe we can provide advice and guidance to, it could be the industry, could be investors. So for example, one of the things we're looking at right now is the effectiveness of the trusted contact person and the temporary hold requirements, right? So looking at it both from the industry perspective, what's your experience? What are your challenges? And then also from the client experience, are there things, for example, that are stopping them from electing to have a trusted contact person? And is there ways that we can break through, those kind of challenges? So I do think it gives us a little bit more flexibility and ability to address investor issues without just looking at the typical regulatory toolkit that we have, which is like policy compliance enforcement.
Right. It's, as I said, I think it's a really, really good initiative. Has there been any, I call them aha moments? Has there been anything to date that you're like, oh, well, that's a different way to look at it? I hadn't thought about that.
I would say I don't know if it's a different way to look at it, but it's definitely more information. So what, as we do the research, some of the things that we're getting, and, I am not at the beginning of my career, let me put it that way. So,
You've seen a bit, yeah.
so hearing about how the younger investors address things, look at advice, where they get their advice, what they're investing in. I found that quite fascinating. So, I mean, that's why I say, investors are as varied as the population. They are the population. So we have to kind of make sure that we're going to where they are. What is it? What are their circumstances? What are they looking for? And how can we assist? So, that has been quite fascinating to me to see how, other
Yeah.
demographics are approaching investing.
Yeah, no, I think you get a really varied, different perspectives. But as I said, I think it's a good initiative because it's really who's going to be affected. Most of the advisors I know, they want to run a clean business. Like everyone I talk to, they all have the same objective. They want to serve their clients the best they can. They want to never hit the radar of a regulator under any circumstances throughout their career. And it should be easy. So from your perspective, you had to give, advisors like 3 tips. These are the 3 tips that'll help you run a clean business, help you make sure that you serve your clients well, and you never hit the radar of a regulator. What would those 3 tips be?
Follow your company's policies and procedures is number 1. Number 2 is when in doubt, talk to your compliance department. And then number 3 is document, document, document. And I say that last part because, we have over 107,000 advisors at CIRO. So there's no quick litmus test that we have to figure out who's doing the right thing, who's doing the wrong thing, right? I wish it was that simple, but it's unfortunately not. So whether it's a compliance officer at your firm or regulators or courts, all we have to go on is what we see is hard evidence.
Right.
And if there's no documented evidence, it comes down to your word versus your client's word, right? And if you're in a position of authority, as you are as a financial professional, the tie is going to go to the client. So when I say this, I'm frequently told by advisors, but why are you making me do all this extra work when I don't have any client complaints, right? My clients love me. I have no client complaints. Why are you making me do all of this administrative work? But first off, I say, wait till you do get a complaint. Then you'll appreciate.
And then you'll wish that I filled out that form. Yeah.
Exactly. And then the second thing I say is, frankly, complaints aren't the yardstick that we use to assess conduct. It's our rules, right? And in fact, I've seen situations, and I'm sure your advisors have seen situations where clients may have lost money, had bad advice, but they say, I don't want to complain. It's very Canadian of us, right? I don't want to complain and get anybody into trouble, right? So again, it's not about client complaints. It's really about, we want to see, as a regulator, we want to see that we've got proactive measures to avoid client harm, and that we monitor compliance as well with our rules. And that's why you need to evidence that you are in fact compliant. So
well, I hope our listeners take document. If they don't hear anything out of this show, document is always the safer way to go.
Yeah.
Now it's interesting. You have the new CIRO bringing together IROC and the MFDA into a single SRO. So you must get a lot of questions like, as an MFDA advisor, what can I expect? Like I get this quite a bit, and to be frank, I'm not sure I know the answer. So there's the authority. What is it that they can expect, and where do you see the direction going in the next couple of years?
Well, that's an interesting question. And I always, I find this amalgamation quite a unique circumstance, because this is the one time in the 20 or so years I've been in this industry where actually a regulatory initiative has resulted in all the work falling on the regulator and all the benefit to the industry. So
I know I'm pretty happy about it. So,
so I guess what I would say at a broad or a high level, that what you can expect is greater optionality, greater flexibility. So we're making it easier to change licensing if you want to, easier to move clients between affiliated companies, easier for mutual fund dealer firms to offer new products like ETFs. And I think that increased optionality is going to, in fact, expand as we look at or as we begin that process of integrating the 2 rule books.
Yeah, no, I think, as I said, from where I sit, I think it's certainly as an integrated firm, we are going to be beneficiaries of this. We can, we're already starting to see it. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to see where we go from here. Now, as you said, you've been at this business for a little bit. You must have some great stories. So maybe the ones you can share, from your regulatory enforcement days, what did you see sort of? I'm going to go two directions. What did you repeatedly see that you just shook your head and you're like, I don't understand why people keep doing this, whatever that may be, and be if you can, some of the horror stories that you might have shared and say, this is why we have regulators, because I think that would be important for our audience.
Yeah, for sure. I can tell you one funny story is back in my enforcement days is I had a psychic advisor who wasn't registered and took a lot of clients' money. And we used to joke that she didn't see the enforcement action coming. So that's
She
one of
saw
the
everything
funny.
else.
Exactly, exactly. But just to answer your question, what do I see? What do I think I would take away from advisors oh, if I was an advisor, I would take away is really, I think the more concerning situations I've run across is when advisors put their own interest above their clients,
Mm,
right? So they're chasing higher compensation, which may mean high risk, illiquid, definitely unsuitable products, leverage, for example.
yeah.
Personal dealings will get you into hot water, borrowing from clients,
Ugh.
having them invest in a personal venture. The new trend, there was some pretty egregious situations earlier this year of a number of advisors becoming a beneficiary for an estate.
Oh my God.
Yeah, those ones are tricky too because the ones that occurred earlier this year, there was, some indication that it was at the advisor's request
Ooh,
that they
even
become a
worse. Oh my God.
beneficiary.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the problem in those cases too is the client isn't there. They're the best witness, and they're not around to say what happened, right? So
Right.
we have firms that have said, if this happens, we've had advisors say, I've given it back to the estate. I want to keep my registration. I don't want to have any, any sort of untoward allegations made. But it's tricky. It's tricky for firms. But for advisors, I would say avoid those types of conflicts.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. And, I've been kicking around this industry for 30 years and I've seen some of these firsthand. And it always makes me shake my head how people think that they can do it and somehow they're never going to get caught. And yet they generally always get caught. So I'm
Yeah.
never really sure of the motivation there other than whatever those short-term gains are. As you can see, compliance is very important to all businesses, especially ours in the financial business, where all we sell is trust. So, if you want to talk about how you can incorporate these sort of risk management type things into your business, happy to have a virtual coffee with you. So, just go to the show notes and you can hit the link and we can schedule a call. The other question that I had was more around the voice of the advisor. And I hear that a lot. Like, how does the regulator hear what the advisor is going through? And I'm sure that you get lots of input, not, both directly and probably sometimes indirectly. So maybe from your perspective, how could they, if they have questions or comments or suggestions, how would they go about that? Like, how do you guys listen to those types of feedback?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. First, I would say you got to learn what's happening.
Yeah.
So we do have an advisor report that you can subscribe to get information from CIRO, which will tell you, recent events. Some firms also have advisor consultation groups
Hmm.
for regulatory initiatives. So all of our rule amendments are public. Some firms bring that to their advisor group to get feedback. And of course, our rule amendments are all public, so you can certainly comment. Anyone can comment if they like. I would also say that from time to time, we also have advisor committees
Hmm.
that advisors participate in, and we're looking at bringing that idea into the new CIRO. And to be honest, we are open to ways to engage with the industry. I would say though we have over 100, as I said, I have over 107,000 advisors.
Right.
So it is a challenge for us to get advisor level input. But if you guys have ideas that you would like to pass by us, we're more than happy to engage with the advisor community. I would also say that we have a membership education department, and they
Okay.
frequently meet with, they're asked a lot. It's a resource to members, and they're asked to come in a lot of times to talk about whether it's to an advisor network, whether it's at a conference, whether it's to compliance staff. We are here to support compliance, and there's no better way to do that than through collaborating with firms, with the compliance department, and really supporting your compliance group, because it's just beneficial for everybody.
Well, I will tell you that certainly your fireside chat at our conference went over extremely well. Like, we had a lot of very, very positive feedback. And one of the funny comments that I got is like, oh yeah, they're just people. They're just doing their business. I don't know what the impression generally was, but, and it's certainly true. It's probably a tough job, as sometimes you probably shake your head at the chosen profession. But to your point, when you see what would happen without regulation, it would be even worse for everybody. So sort of my last thing is, what are you excited about? What's sort of on the horizon that you are excited about, and that people in the industry should be excited about as well?
Well, one thing I'm excited about is we do have a new innovation function at CIRO. So that's one area that I'm excited about, because I think there's a lot going to be coming at us from particularly a technology perspective. And I think I'm looking at it not just for benefits to the industry, and there might be risks as well,
Right.
but also looking at it from the investor perspective. Like, what are new ideas? What are new things we can bring? How can we increase access to advice? How can we make the advisory process more efficient? All of those kind of ideas I'm fascinated about, and I'd like to see us build that function out as we go forward.
Yeah, that is. See, I learned something else new today. I'm learning a
There
lot
you go.
here at the on this show. So then, this segment of the show, I do what I call a rapid fire. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and it's
Okay.
sort of the first thing that pops into your head, and how you would answer it. So the first question I always ask is, what are you passionate about? What do you love?
Personally, I would say investor protection again. I know that sounds boring, but it's
No, it's
because
a
I've
calling.
seen the downside of bad advice and bad behavior.
And what would be your most memorable client interaction? So you've probably had to, and as a client, probably on a consumer level, what would be your most memorable?
My most memorable it's unfortunate, but my most memorable was there was a fraud that I was involved in. And I thought I did a great job. I got 75% of the money back. I thought that was fantastic.
Right.
There was only 25% missing, and I thought I did a pretty good job. And then the con artists recommended that the 75% be refunded and taken offshore, where I couldn't get my hands on it. And I had a bunch of investors coming to me saying, now I understand it's fraud. Could you get my 75% back? So the fact that there was an enforcement action, a freeze,
Right.
we only got 70, that wasn't enough.
Right.
And that was memorable to me, because I realized the power of con artists are not obviously following the rules. They can say whatever they want. I can only stick to, facts and information. And it's very difficult for clients sometimes to believe that they lost money and, trust authorities. So that was, sorry for the long-winded answer, but that was one of the most memorable.
See, that is a very good answer, and it's why regulators exist, right? It's what is necessary, because these types of things happen probably more regularly than people think.
Mm-hmm.
And the last question is, how do you want to be remembered?
Honestly, by my family. I would like to be remembered by them as contributing to their life in a positive way.
I like it. See, this is fantastic. So I'll do my little rant, which is, as I said, and we have a saying in the firm, which is, compliance is your best friend. That's they're there because our commodity and what we sell is trust. Clients have to trust in our advisors. They have to trust in the advice they give. They have to trust that there isn't any, to your point, personal dealings, any of these things that would in any way erode that trust, because that is all we have as an individual advisor, all we have as a firm, and as we have as an industry. And your advice has been great. Stick to the rules, follow the rules. When in doubt, talk to somebody, and document. So as I said, if there's only one thing people get out of this show, is document.
Exactly.
So, I think that this has been a great show. I think that the people have got a lot out of it, and it's a good way from a regulation point of view to, sort of get out there and, talk to the people who every day have to live this. And sometimes, again, have some questions, because to your point, they say, well, I'm a great advisor, I never have any complaints. Why do I have to do all this stuff? And now we know why they have to do it. So as I leave, any final words for our audience?
I would just say compliance is good business.
I like it. There's something that should be a logo somewhere, or a tagline. Compliance is good business. So thank you very much, Karen McGuinness from the new CIRO, and from now heading up the Office of the Investor, which is an initiative that I'm certainly looking forward to personally. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been very informative, and I'm sure our audience has certainly enjoyed all of your input.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today, Chris. Thank you. Much appreciated.
This is great. Thank you, Karen. Thanks for joining me on Turning the Page. What did you learn from today's episode? If you follow me on LinkedIn, please drop me a comment there. I'd love to chat with you about it over virtual coffee. Send me a message on LinkedIn, or you can do so at our website. The link's in the show notes. I'm Chris Reynolds, and until next time.